Hey, good afternoon. I'm Todd Claussen. I'm Territory Agronomist with DeKalb and Asgrow, and I serve Central Iowa and Western Iowa. It is March 16th, just before noon, so good morning, and I'm bringing this here today in support of Bloomgren Seed, who will bring to you what we'll call Monday morning alerts. Today there's a few things I just want to discuss. The need of seeds that are already in the ground or that we're about ready to put into the ground. I want to talk about the temperature. I want to talk about the warmest March on record. I want to talk about what I think is one of the few concerns as we look forward to putting corn in the ground, and then talk also about some planting conditions. So, as we're sitting here today, what we have is we put seed into the ground. Okay? And as we put seed into the ground, corn seed will imbibe or absorb about 30% of its weight in water. When it does that, it will begin to divide cells and duplicate cells, and it will begin the respiration process. And all these chemical reactions cumulatively are known as germination. So as this seed imbibes water, as you can see here, the first thing that comes out is the radicle. Radicle is your main root, is the root that goes downward. Then will come the shoot. Okay, so this plant, this seed, has obviously imbibed enough water for the germination process to take place. This has been in the ground 6 days. I am just south of Ogden, Iowa, and this has been in the ground in first year corn for about 6 days. So I think about that, then I look at another seed that's been in the ground since about the 4th of April. And so this has the radicle going down. Here's my radicle coming downward. Then I've got my 3 seminal roots, but then I also have the shoot coming upward, and the mesocardial, which pushes that shoot to the surface. So how long does it take this to come from this? Well, it takes about 120 heat units, or 120 growing degree days, once the seed has imbibed enough water for the chemical reaction known as germination to take place. So what's a heat unit? What's a growing degree day? It's simply a measure of heat, not energy, but heat, which will indicate or be the dictator of how rapid chemical reactions take place. So today, March 16th, is supposed to be 60 degrees for a high. So if I have 60 degrees for a high temperature and 50 degrees for a low temperature, that particular day will accumulate 5 growing degree days or 5 heat units. So tomorrow we're expected to get 70. So if the average temperature is 70 for a high and 50 for a low, then that particular day is going to accumulate 10 heat units. So if I average 10 heat units a day, how many days will it take this to go to this? Well, 12 to 14 days, because it takes 120 heat units to get up and out of the ground. We also have to think about, we are sitting on the warmest March on record. Okay? The mean temperature in March was 50.7 degrees, and that was just west of here in Greene County near Jefferson. The previous warm was 50.1 degrees, and that was all the way back to 1910. So what has that given us? It's accumulated a great deal of heat units. Right here, or close to here in Ames, Iowa, we're about 15-18 miles due west of Ames. Ames to date, from January 1st, has accumulated about 424 heat units, or 424 growing degree days. Well, normally we average about 80 or 82 at this point in time, so we're 5 to 6 times the heat unit accumulation that we historically have on average. Well, what does that mean? That means we're well ahead of schedule from a chemical reaction perspective. What's that going to do to a couple things? What about insects? Let's take corn rootworm as an example. Corn rootworm will reach about 50% egg hatch when growing degree units have accumulated about 700 GDDs. Well, we're 425 today. Look how close to hatch of corn rootworm eggs that we are. That will have an effect. So I'm going to have eggs hatching. You're going to have larvae beginning to feed, and we still have 85 to 90% of the corn to put into the ground yet. So I could have corn rootworm larvae hatched and feeding on very, very small corn seedlings with very, very small root systems that have produced very little of the toxin that will help control the corn rootworm larvae. So that might be an effect. What's the other thing is nitrogen. When does nitrogen start to convert from ammonium to nitrate to be taken up by the plant? Think about anhydrous ammonia. You don't put on anhydrous ammonia until it's what, 50 degrees or below. Why? Because of the chemical reactions in the soil. Well, we've had soil temperatures above 50 degrees for over 30 days. So now we have some moisture out here over the last 4 and 5 days. We have a pretty good stretch of moisture, anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches. So we have conversion of nitrogen to the nitrate form, which is mobile in the soil, and it can be taken up by the plants, but it can also be ridden down with the soil solution and can leach downward. So something to think about. One of the few things I'm concerned at this point in time of putting corn in the ground on April the 16th or even earlier is what's known as imbibitional chilling. You'll hear people call it seed shock. As I mentioned before, this seedling takes 30% of its weight in water absorbed before the chemical reaction known as germination will take place. Now, if that initial imbibition or that initial absorption of water is 35 degrees, 33 degrees, it can have an effect on the cell membranes in this seedling and in this embryo. Those membranes can become very rigid and they can rupture. It can deter germination, it can abort the radicle, it can abort the shoot, and it can lower my germination rate. It can lower my emergence and development of this plant. So it can have an issue. Now today we've been above 50 degree soil temperatures for over 30 days. I don't have a huge concern, but if we would plummet in temperature and if we go backwards in soil temperature and then get a rain, it could be some concern. And lastly, planting conditions. We're a little bit wet here today, but I think by midday tomorrow on Tuesday or late day tomorrow, I think we'll be back in the field. Remember, plant in good conditions. It's one thing that will haunt you the rest of the growing season if you go out there when it's tacky, go out there when it's not fit. So please pay attention to those things, and if we can help you at any point in time, please give us a call. So again, this is Monday Morning Alert. It's April 16th, 2012. Thank you.